Welcome back. Today I am again joined by a very excellent guest with very interesting things to say. My name is Ashley Clements.
And my name is Margaret Dunlap.
And it's a Look Back Diaries. Da-na-na-na-da-da. Margaret is a professional writer. We did not mention in your last episode what it is that you've been working on lately, and it's very cool, so maybe you want to tell them.
Yay! What have I been working on?
You write for television.
I do write for television, yes, and I have been writing recently for several animated series, including Blade Runner, Black Lotus, and also the live action, but with no humans appearing in it, Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance.
That was an exciting one to see your name on. Or just like between your TV gigs that you joined us. As we were saying previously, you are responsible for so much of Lizzie's sense of humor. And something else that I wanted to point out is that this is a show on which the policy was basically no references to current events and current pop culture things. The reason I bring this up is because you snuck in several Star Trek references. I can think of two off the top of my head, and we are both big Star Trek people, and so there are times that you would say like, you got that right because I did that for you. And I'd be like, yeah. The mind meld, which has already happened, you wrote before me.
I did not know if you were a Star Trek fan at all at the time that
Again,
I wrote that.
I didn't exist, hadn't been 3D printed, so
I did not. I don't know that episode.
As Rachel recalls, the first 16 were written before the show was cast.
Okay, yeah, the first 12 or 16, something like that. Yeah. So I think I might have written it, and then you were the one and then it was your choice to do the full my thoughts to your thoughts, my mind to your mind sort of hand gesture there, and like I was not going to stand in the way of making this a more involved Star Trek joke than it already was. So, yeah, that was
also fine. Plenty of people don't catch that it's a mind meld, but do get that I'm doing something to like read her mind. So it works. Yeah. But also like that's not like a current pop culture reference. Original Trek is the 60s. So, but there's no obvious hip cultural references in this show intentionally. That was the rule. Sometimes things had to be taken out, as I recall. Rachel also, I know, would like sneak in references that were so obscure that I didn't get them. I did get your Star Trek references and I appreciated them very much, and just wanted to say that while you were here, because I don't know if you'll be here on all of those episodes, but I know them. What's in this episode? Neither of us remember. Let's check it out. An empty screen. That's unusual.
Yeah,
there's no people in it. Oh, she sneaks in.
Hi there. Here comes Lizzie.
We're being a little sneaky today.
Yes, very sneaky.
From Jane. I know it's weird.
Apparently I was hiding behind the camera.
Especially in your own bedroom. But she's already looked.
She'll never look for you there.
Enough that she has to check every other hiding place in the house before she comes back here. We played hide and seek a lot as a kid, so that should keep her occupied for a while. Why
I also played a lot of hide and seek.
My name is Lizzie Bennett. And it's kind
of
a long story.
And I was real small and bendy, so I would fit myself into places that people would not think the person could go.
Mom hosted with Bang and
I once hid in a laundry hamper. It was a triumph.
The memory of the
yes,
from his mind
laundry hamper is a great one.
Great. Except for the whole.
We had a coffee table you could like put stuff in, but I got excited.
Anyway, that night at Carter's, we were all having a very, let's say, convivial evening, and
yes,
big
it is.
Houses.
It is.
Euphemism. We weren't that buzzed. So he's going on about how much space there is for just 3 people.
I feel like you are very responsible for Lizzie having such an advanced vocabulary.
You're right. So last week, Lydia reminded
I would try, like occasionally I'd go too far, and you.
Yeah, I think I would be like, can we come on,
dial it back? But it is one of the reasons that I loved writing for Mr. Collins and also Darcy.
Yes,
when I got
you get to be just as absolutely verbose as possible.
No, that's not what you said a second ago.
Oh, she was listening.
Oh,
then
Jane, not an idiot.
Hi. Is it because you don't want to go to the party? I know you said you feel like third wheel, but you're really not. Caroline talks all the time about how much she likes you.
Speaking of how sincere our show is.
Being and I will get to talking and Kara,
I mean,
oh gosh, Lydia.
No, Lydia will be fine.
Laura did
Things
so
like
much
she could do
with
soft
Jane,
slides,
but
so,
it's hard to play such a
keep her busy all
sincere
night.
character.
I want you to
And
stuff
she
with
did get
Darcy
to
and
have some
Caroline,
fun
who
costume theater
allegedly
moments and
really
stuff to let her
likes me.
break out of
Jane, seriously.
being just
Don't
so
worry about it.
sincere all the time.
If you want to go to
And I
the
remember
party, then
later
why are you
on,
hiding?
sort of like
Old
the
time's sake. Remember all those games of
Jane
hide and seek we
romance
used to
was
play?
kind of
Wasn't that fun?
hard,
Lizzie?
and I
Oh, do you think
remember
that I'm
sort
too
of
involved in your love life?
taking that
not.
storyline under my wing a
funny.
little
I'm
bit
gonna
of saying, it's like, no, we're
Do
just
you
going to
okay?
tell the fairy tale and it's going to be
Definitely.
beautiful.
It's gonna be beautiful.
Good, because I have this discarded sample from work and I'm redoing the neckline and you're going to look amazing. You're going to love it.
Me?
Oh,
What
that's
about
so
you?
sweet.
You're over there
I'm
hiding
obsessed with
dress.
Laura's shirt here.
I already
Yeah,
It's super cute.
Jane Bennett, did you think of yourself before someone else?
But yeah.
So can I get you for a fitting?
And I
Yeah,
recognize
just
what I'm
waiting
wearing
for
as
the
a
show
dress
here.
that I
Okay,
used
hurry
to
up.
own.
Is it from Anthropology?
Oh, what would you
It's
have done?
not. It's
Oh, no.
not one of
She's my
my
sister.
my
I
better.
fold like a real
I mean,
man.
it like
And I'm happy for
I think
her.
up
I am.
close it wasn't
I don't think
actually
I'm too
like
involved in my
very
sister's
nice,
personal
but
life. Jane and I have always been like that.
it was
share
totally
close.
too
everything.
involved.
And I
Did you?
wore
Who else am I gonna
everything
talk
that
to?
I owned in
Besides Charlotte
this show.
and the internet. I mean, Lydia, Mom, Dad. I sound like there's anything
Oof,
in my life to be
no.
getting excited about. My lack of career, my last year of grad school coming up, my uncertain future.
I feel like that's probably. I wonder if the comments are like,
And on that note, I've got a
I
thing
relate
and
to
a
Lizzie.
party to attend.
It's like you're not the main character of this show, but you totally are.
well, until more Darcy stuff happens, like that's kind of so much of Lizzie's arc, and
Yeah.
facilitating like this is my show, but the plot is currently revolving around other
Currently
people
about other stuff.
is a really interesting challenge. You said before we were recording, and I want you to tell them that in that initial batch of episodes that you wrote before I existed, that it was your idea to put a door in the background.
Yeah, it was when it was like just me and Bernie and Rachel, and we were just doing some we'd talked about it. There was like a conference room at the WGA, I remember, where we would meet and have our story meetings. They had a little whiteboard and we worked it out. And we just wanted to write a couple of scripts just for a proof of concept, figure out how long is an episode, what's going on, like something that we could film and we could see just to see if is this going to be anything that people would want to watch. And we didn't know anything about our setup at all. It was just all we knew was Lizzie was vlogging to the camera. And I was writing my episode, which I think eventually became episode 3, which I think is the first episode that I wrote.
I think that's right.
And there was a moment where I called or I texted Bernie or I sent an email. I'm like, can I have a door? He's like, what? And I'm like, it's more interesting if there's a door behind her. He's like, I guess. And so when we shot it, there was not a door. We had the door was sort of from one side of camera and the other actress would come in that way. But it just, as soon as it made it really hard to shoot in the bedroom because everyone had to be crammed against a wall because the door was in the shot. You couldn't have people in the hall outside. But it creates that depth of field, and it just makes it feel like Lizzie's in a real space that other people exist in. And as became a running gag, her sisters would burst in through the door. You never knew who was listening, and it made it on a couple of the other angles, like at Pemberley Digital, that one of those angles had the door, but the other two didn't. And one was just the windows behind your setup. And I remember seeing in the comments, somebody had a thing about Pemberley Digital looks great, but those windows are so obviously green screened. And I remember being like, if I had the budget for a green screen, there would be random mecha robot fights going on behind you for no reason. Why would I green screen the Santa Monica
We would at least
skyline?
put San Francisco behind me.
We would have put something. It's but it did. But I think it felt fake because nobody was coming out of it, and our audience was used to that depth that existed behind you in the frame.
Well, and I think that even as as the actor, it was much harder to pretend when like the door, because when you couldn't see the door, people would just stand right off of frame and then like pop in. And unlike Charlotte pretending to be behind the camera, like Julia being shoved in the corner, like that is actually where she would be. Whereas it's Netherfield and it's some of Pemberley Digital, and then it's the end, the last batch of episodes where there's no door, and it does make people kind of popping in less, I don't know. It feels different, and it feels more like playing pretend than just like having somebody come in and
well, I imagine from your perspective, because like as you said, you couldn't see the door behind you, so someone who appeared was literally just entering your consciousness.
Exactly.
You didn't have to ignore the fact that someone is standing like off behind the lights and trying to sneak their way in without kicking anything over. But yeah, like we didn't know if we were going to get to make more than those first 12 episodes.
Everyone keeps saying this, and I feel like I didn't allow it as an actual possibility. I just was like, no, we're going to make all of Pride and Prejudice. Like, I couldn't allow for the possibility. I think if I had been thinking about the idea of, if it's not successful, we don't get to make more of it, and if it's not successful, it'll be because people don't like me, that I would have gotten in my head. I was very prepared. I don't think I've talked about this on the show yet. There was a line in an interview that we did. I was very prepared, and I think probably Bernie was telling me to be prepared. Like, hey, it's the internet.
Yeah.
People are not particularly kind. Don't read the comments, and, you know, you might get, like, some mean stuff said about you. The line that was in the interview is that I said I was expecting everyone to just be saying like, shut your ugly dump truck face. I was also told, because it was happening on other women's videos, that I should be prepared for people to, you know, be like, show us your boobs. And that's not the audience of the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. There are people, the people who didn't like it, who felt the need to comment, were people who were like diehard P&P fans who didn't like the way we were adapting it, or, you know, like they were smart in the way that they didn't like the show.
Yeah. Well, I remember that was a real fear when we were starting out, was sort of the like, what are the Janeites gonna say when they see this?
They mostly love it.
I think it was the Jane Austen Society of Central New Jersey was the first like official, because like they have chapters all over.
Yes, and I've been a guest for the Southern California branch
for Jasna, but like they were the first one to sort of post on one of the Facebook pages or like promote it to their people's like, oh, this is so good. And I just had that moment of, okay, we're gonna be fine. It's not just that we think that this is a good, like, because we always loved what we were doing, but having like people who really love Pride and Prejudice get really excited about our show.
Yeah, that was
like incredibly validating. And also, I cannot tell you how many times fans would come up to me at the con, like when I was at the table, or, you know, at VidCon or LeakyCon when we were up there, and be like, I could never get into Jane Austen. Like my mom would tell me to read the book and I couldn't do it. And your show got me into reading the original because I wanted to know what it was based on. I wanted to know what was going to happen next. With a special shout out to a young woman who was on the escalator right in front of me and Laura Spencer as we were heading up the Anaheim Convention Center. I was like, and she recognized Laura, of course, like, oh my God, I love the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. I used it to introduce my mom to YouTube. And I'm like, great, we literacy for the young and computer literacy for the older generation. I was just so pleased by that. I remember talking to somebody about like the difference between working on a web series and working on a TV series. And I'm like, look, when you work on a TV show, even one with like a cult fan following, a certain percentage of your audience, like again, this was 2012, a certain percentage of your audience is going to be really internet savvy and like looking for it online and being in forums and that sort of stuff. When your show is on YouTube, by definition, your entire fan base possesses at least that level of internet savvy. And so like you hear from so it's a much greater percentage of people that you hear from, just because you're not having that platform change.
Yeah. Speaking of hearing from people, let's look at the comments.
Let's look at
because it was too good a transition not to take it. I love it when they do this. Love Peace Natty says, Jane pictured to herself a happy evening in the society of her two friends and the attentions of their brother. From Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, chapter 17.
Oh.
They do this a lot. There are fans who like found the quotes.
That's
yes.
Great.
The corresponding Jane's aha when she finds Lizzie is so funny. And I guess people wanted to see, did they want to see what I was wearing or what Laura was wearing? Because Lizzie Bennet herself replies, a lot of requests to see this dress, going to talk to Jane, but I don't
I think
know.
It's the dress that she was altering for you to go to the party.
Oh, good memory, because then we did take pictures in a dress. I mean, I'm wearing like Forever 21 dress. Like, it's not even good. And I wasn't very good at hair or makeup, and I did my own. I'll find it and I'll put it here because now we know where that goes. But it's not particularly well styled. It doesn't look like Jane put it together. Like, because Jane
Looks by Jane was kind of Jane's primary platform outside of being in the videos. And I have to confess, like, if there's an aspect of the show that I had pretty much zero to do with, it is the lookbook aspects of it. Because, like, Bernie is a clothes and fashion guy, and I am not. And so that was just one of those things, like, this is your domain, and yeah.
Well, and as much as he was, I mean, I feel like Bernie was really into, like, streetwear side of fashion. He took the pictures, I believe. But
oh, yeah.
But Laura and I were discussing the fact that we didn't even have a stylist. Like, you styled this.
Yeah, and you guys were styling yourselves.
I did. Well, we were all styling ourselves, but none of us were supposed to be, like, working in fashion except Laura. Everyone every day walks around having styled themselves. That's just a normal person who got dressed today. Like, she had to, like, have a whole thing.
Beautiful
and they were very lucky that she had those skills. And there's just a lot of serendipitous ways in which the casting worked out really well.
Didn't have a huge budget on this show, but it's like, if it feels like the characters are having true emotions, then it doesn't matter if things are a little wiggly at the edges. That sort of I'm not sure it really hit me until we were much deeper in the process, but just the fact that Lizzie is there looking straight down the barrel of her webcam every day, like in a screen that you're holding in your hand or is right there on your desk. It's a very intimate medium. It feels like she's talking to you. I wrote a piece about the show for an academic anthology recently, and I'm like, in TV, the audience invites the characters into their living room. Our audience was carrying you guys around in their pocket. It's that
and inviting you into her
feeling.
bedroom. Yeah. I think that vloggers in general experience people really feeling, it's just a very heightened parasocial relationship, right? Like, it is this feeling of like, hey, I'm going to let you in on my personal life. I live here. Like, you're seeing things that are personal to them. And I was in this very bizarre world of people thinking that they really knew me, but that then also that I was really Lizzie. And sometimes, there'll be comments that are like, Ashley just basically is Lizzie. And in some ways that's true. And I brought a lot of myself and my own sense of humor and my mannerisms and things to Lizzie, but I don't talk like Lizzie. I mean, I might talk cadence-wise like Lizzie, but Lizzie uses a very different vocabulary than I do. There is a sort of heightened language to our show, in a way. And I was so used to doing Shakespeare that, like, that didn't bother me at all, but I don't talk like Lizzie, and obviously everything else was fake. Like, I didn't have those relationships. None of those things were happening. Like, I was still acting.
In those very early days when we were starting out, we definitely were having the discussion about how much of this are we pretending is real. And Bernie and I were initially, we came to an agreement, obviously, but I think initially he was more of the sort of like lonely girl idea of like,
he really didn't want me talking about
is it anything fake? And I, in part because I am a behind the scenes person, and when you say this is all real, you erase everything that happens behind the scenes.
True enough.
But also because I tend to be of the belief that people like to suspend their disbelief. They don't like being fooled. And when eventually you reveal the truth, they're not like, oh, wow, you were super clever. They're yelling, oh, I feel like an idiot, and now I resent you for that. So I always pushed for, like, no, we have to have credits in the description. Like, people need to know that these are actors. And people did. Like, they knew that Ashley, they knew you had a name. But what I didn't quite anticipate is, like, no, we know that it's, like, we know it's scripted, but
but people thought I wrote it.
They were
people
imagining
still think that I must have written all the tweets.
They were,
and, I've had people ask, like, did you get paid to do all the tweets? And I'm like, well, no, but also I didn't do the tweets.
Didn't do them, yeah. Because they were picturing you and Julia in your bedroom with maybe Hank hanging out running the camera, making the show. Yeah, you have to let people know.
I was aware that people assumed that, like, I was behind all of it. I tried to really, shout out the writers and the whole team that made the show, because I knew I wasn't doing it by myself. I'm going to wrap this one up, and I'll be very happy to have Margaret come back in the future.
It's so much fun. Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
Thanks for being here. Bye-bye.